Indonesia has a significantly high population, totaling 240 million people as at 2014. This makes Indonesia a very attractive potential market to anyone considering establishing business operations in the country. The country has substantial national resources. These include liquid natural gas, coal, tin, copper, gold and silver for mining. For agriculture, it has an ideal climate and soil to farm many crops, including palm oil, rubber, coffee and cocoa. Interestingly, there are a very large number of diverse ethnic groups in Indonesia, living on approximately 17,000 islands. A vast variety of different cultures, belief systems and languages exist in Indonesia. Indeed, it is one of the most diverse nations on earth. This diversity can present a challenge to foreigners conducting business in Indonesia. The history of Indonesia can be traced back to the Renaissance era. The Indonesian islands of Java and Sumatra were ruled by two major empires comprising an advanced civilization for approximately 1,000 years. In the next stage of Indonesian history, the Dutch established control over Indonesia in a gradual process, which started in 1602. This newly established colony was set to become one of the most valuable colonies in the world. In World War II, Indonesia was invaded by Japan. After Japan surrendered to the Allies, the Republic of Indonesia was created and the independence of Indonesia was proclaimed. Utilising the banner of guided democracy, an authoritarian state was established by current President Sukarno. Numerous important significant military and political powers were shifted to General Suharto, who led the armed forces of Indonesia at the time, during March 1966, away from President Sukarno. Suharto became acting president of Indonesia in March 1967, having been appointed by the Provisional People's Consultative Assembly. Sukarno was placed under house arrest, and this arrangement remained so until the end of his life. Suharto was appointed by the People's Consultative Assembly in 1973, 1978, 1983, 1988 and 1998, each time for a 5-year term. The Asian economic and financial crisis, which occurred in 1997, hit Indonesia hard. In addition, there was a severe drought and prices for export plummeted. The rupiah was floated for the first time, resulting in a depreciation in its value, capital fleeing the nation, and a rise in inflation. Demonstrations began against Suharto, fueling unrest in the country. This resulted in Suharto's resignation in May 1998. Habibie became president of Indonesia and made several major changes, including stabilising the economy and removing government restrictions on organisations such as the media, labour unions and political parties. The first free and fair election was held in 2004. In a first for the nation, the president was directly chosen by the people, not appointed by the People's Consultative Assembly. Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono was elected to president in 2004. In 2009, Yudhoyono was re-elected to the president of Indonesia. A certain amount of seats to the Parliament of Indonesia reserved for the armed forces prior to 2004. In 2004, its formal involvement in Indonesian politics ended. However, the military still has some influence over the Indonesian government. To succeed in doing business in Indonesia, it is essential to have an understanding of the culture of the country, as ways of doing business can be quite different than that in Australia. It is most often the case that Indonesian businesses have a hierarchical structure, with decision-making centred at the top of the hierarchy. The Indonesian people have a different attitude to time than Western people. Business meetings could often start or end late. This is part of the culture of Indonesia, and business people intending on doing business in Indonesia should be aware of this issue. There is a custom in Indonesia of exchanging business cards and giving of gifts. It is advised that if business people participate in this custom, that they keep gifts small to avoid any allegations of corruption. Translators could be required at business meetings due to the possibility of some delegates having low skills in communicating in the English language. Nepotism is common in Indonesia. Inefficient, large bureaucracies are also common and can be difficult to do business with. The economy of Indonesia is market structured. However, there is considerable involvement in the economy by the government. Indonesia is involved in many international organisations, including the following: the United Nations, ASEAN Regional Forum, the East Asia Summit, Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation Forum, G20, International Monetary Fund, World Bank, and World Trade Organization. There are several current issues that the Indonesian government needs to deal with. These include uneven benefits from democratic and economic progress, fragile institutions that lack capacity to adequately address its social service needs, and risks from climate change and environmental degradation. Indonesia experienced a successful recovery from the global financial crisis, which started in 2008. It even managed to improve its debt grading during this time. Further, Indonesia experienced impressive growth rates of 6.1 to 6.2% per annum during the 8 years ended in 2013. By 2025, Indonesia aims to achieve the status of being a developed country. Australia has a free trade agreement with Indonesia, which was signed in 2009, making it an attractive country for Australians to invest in or commence business operations. There are several concerns for businesses considering investing in Indonesia. Corruption is often experienced in Indonesia, and it can be difficult to deal with the cumbersome bureaucracies. There is a shortage of quality talent in human resources, and the nation's infrastructure can be of low quality and reliability. There is a strong respect in Indonesian business for the traditional business hierarchical structure. Businesses considering implementing a matrix-style organisational structure could find this a challenging process. Decision-making is either driven by the hierarchy or a consensus approach amongst peers. The consensus method can be time-consuming, and accordingly patience should be exercised with regard to the decision-making process. There are two types of banks that are allowed by the banking law of 1992, which was amended in 1998. The two types of banks allowed are rural or commercial. The customer base of rural banks is predominantly low-income individuals, and they are small-scale operators. Commercial banks provide a wide range of banking services. However, a permit is required for them to conduct foreign exchange transactions. Businesses considering establishing operations in Indonesia should investigate whether there is an accessible commercial bank at a convenient location to the proposed site of the new business. The system for gaining business licenses in Indonesia is seen by the Asia Foundation to be corrupt, time-consuming and difficult to navigate. Businesses considering investing in Indonesia should exercise due care and patience in this regard. Indonesia can be seen to have rather restrictive laws relating to labour and employment. Work permits are necessary for all foreign workers to Indonesia. It is a requirement for them to hold a university qualification. Foreign workers are only allowed to be utilised by businesses where a suitable Indonesian citizen cannot be found to fill the position. Further, if a business finds that it needs to utilise an expatriate, then it is required that an Indonesian citizen be trained to eventually replace the foreign worker. As at 2010, the corporate tax rate was 25%. Restrictions apply regarding foreign ownership of businesses in some segments of the economy. Businesses considering commencing operations or investing in Indonesia should investigate the relevant legal aspects early on in the process of feasibility analysis. It is legal for trade unions to operate in Indonesia. However, relative to the total number of people in the workforce, there are few members. Whilst there is a minimum wage, it is not adequately enforced in practice. Whilst bribery is against the law in Indonesia, it is prevalent in the business environment of this country. Businesses investigating possible opportunities in Indonesia should be mindful that there is a likelihood that they may encounter persons requesting bribes when doing business. In recent years, there has been a number of terrorist attacks on Indonesian buildings, including hotels, the Australian Embassy and restaurants and bars. The Indonesian government responded by launching operations against terrorist organisations. However, there is still a significant terrorist threat to business organisations in Indonesia. Businesses considering operations in Indonesia should be cognizant of this. Whilst there are many challenges involved in starting business operations in Indonesia, it represents a very attractive market due to its large population. Anyone who is considering commencing business operations in Indonesia should carefully plan the process of gaining the necessary approvals, exercise patience when dealing with the bureaucracies, and be sensitive to cultural differences. I hope that I have successfully provided all viewers of this presentation with a clearer understanding of the unique business environment of Indonesia.